Hello again, to some more review science notes. Eventually, I promise we will get into some new material, some more fun material, but we really need to lay down a foundation before we can get to any of that. So these first couple weeks, I think it's 2 weeks, we're going to really spend time reviewing and practicing and making sure our skills are up to date so we can proceed. So today we're doing our second part of measuring. It's density. Just as a kind of overview before we even click on. Density isn't something you can measure. So the title here is actually a little misleading. Density is something we have to calculate. There's no scale for density, there's no tube for density, there's no vacuum for density. You have to find two other things and do a little math, and then you can calculate how dense something is. So let's jump into this. So we're still using that metric system, or the International System of Units, the SI system. So we're talking about density. What this is it's the amount of matter that occupies a particular space. So how much stuff can fill up a certain area. So let me give you an example image in your head. Let's say I have a cup. Just a normal, kitchen cup. What do you think I can fit more of inside of the cup? A bunch of sunflower seeds or a bunch of ping pong balls? Hopefully you answered sunflower seeds. If you counted how many sunflower seeds I could fit in a cup, it would probably be, I don't know, several hundred or maybe even several thousand. I'm not going to sit there and count. But how many ping pong balls can fit in a cup? Probably is going to be countable by a 6-year-old. It's probably going to be maybe 5, 6, 7. That's density. How much stuff can fit in a certain area? Okay, so just to give you an image, that's what we're dealing with here. So it has a formula, and it's not hard like math class. Super easy. Density equals mass divided by volume. We've already talked about both of those other things the last time we were together for notes. Excuse me. Remember, mass is the amount of stuff. Your mass will stay the exact same, whether you're on Earth, Mars, Jupiter, some new planet with aliens that we don't know about yet. Okay, so your mass always stays the exact same. Volume is the amount of space you take up. So remember I gave you that example of a bathtub and putting a Great Dane into the bathtub. When you do that, that Great Dane, that big dog, is going to go down, sit down in the bathtub and push out all sorts of water. It's going to overflow onto your bathroom floor. You're going to have to get a mop or some towels and clean it all up. Okay, so those two things together make the formula for density. How much mass you have divided by how much space you take up equals how dense you are. Remember that example with the sunflower seeds and the ping pong balls? The sunflower seeds were more densely packed. The ping pong balls were spaced out. Okay, my classroom is huge. We have a lot of space to spread out, and I have 28 students in my biggest class. If my classroom was the size of a closet, we would be very densely packed. There would be a lot of us in a very small space. So that's what we're looking at with density here. How much stuff fits in a certain space. So the unit gets a little crazy. It's not that bad though. We're going to get through this. So is that triangle, same thing. It looks a little crazy. We're going to be fine. So we're going to take it one slide at a time. So I'm just going to read this and I'll talk about why on the next couple. So the units are grams per cubic centimeter for solids. I need you to write that down. I did not type it. I need you to write grams per cubic centimeter right here. Draw a little equal sign and write solids. And then grams per milliliter, G-ml, that's for liquids. So if we're dealing with liquid mercury, we're going to use grams per milliliter. So make sure you add those notes because otherwise you're going to get a question wrong on your worksheet coming up. So grams per cubic centimeter is for solids, grams per milliliter are for liquids. All right, so let's jump into some practice problems. My screen is going to look a little different for these next couple slides because I need to be able to draw on it. So, there's proof. Example problem. Here's this triangle. What you need to understand, most of you, is that density equals mass divided by volume. That's it. It's right here. Density equals mass divided by volume. Okay? Nothing too complicated yet. Uh-oh. Okay, back at it. So mass divided by volume. So let's write that up here so we have it again. Okay. So we have a question mark for our density. We know our mass and we know our volume. This is easy. It's just like math class where you have formulas and you plug stuff into a formula. So density equals mass divided by volume. Plug in some numbers. Our mass is 95, keep the unit, grams. Our volume is 950, milliliters. So at this point, you should get up and get a calculator. Pause the video and try this on your own. I'm sure most of you are not. So just realize that you're going to have to do this on your own at some point. So I suggest you get up and grab a calculator and start practicing now. They're in the back corner, but you all should have a calculator for your math class, okay? So when you type this into a calculator, what comes up is 0.1. You keep these exactly as they are. It's G over ml. It's a weird looking, oh, there we go. So that's your final answer. This first answer, your density is 0.1 grams per milliliter. That's it. Nothing that difficult. I think that's pretty easy. So let's do another one. So the second one is a word problem. Don't freak out. We have a lot of words in here we don't know, or we don't need. A block of aluminum occupies a volume. Eventually that's going to be important. Right now we don't need it. So we see the word volume and we have a number, 150 milliliters. So I'm going to write our formula up here again. Density equals mass divided by volume. It's right here in this triangle. Density equals mass divided by volume. So we have our volume. So let's go ahead and plug that in. Mass divided by volume. Volume's on the bottom, so let's keep it on the bottom. Milliliters. Make sure you keep those letters with it. And it has a mass of 40.5. Mass goes on top. 40.5. Keep that letter, that unit. Grams. Again, this is where you should get up, get a calculator, do some math. You should practice typing it into your calculator. You would type in 40.5 divided by 15. Remember that fraction bar right here? That's a division symbol. So when you do that, if you do that, you would have 2.7 grams per milliliter. Okay, we kept those letters. We didn't change them at all. They're just the same exact thing right here. Okay, nothing too difficult. Let's try a third one. Last but not least, it's another word problem, and we're going to talk through it. We're going to get rid of any words we don't need, and we're going to pull out what we do need. So I always, until I memorize something, I write it a couple times. Density equals mass divided by volume. Again, it's still in this triangle. You're going to see this triangle again in a couple days, maybe, or definitely in high school. So I'm showing it to you here. Density equals mass divided by volume. It's the exact same thing I have up there. Okay, so we're going to clear that so we have a nice clear screen. Density equals mass divided by volume. So let's read. Mercury metal is poured into a graduated cylinder that holds exactly 22.5 milliliters. If you look back in your notes, milliliters is going to be for volume. So we have our volume. Mass divided by volume. Volume's on the bottom. So we keep it on the bottom. 22.5 milliliters. The mercury has a mass of 306 grams. So we keep that mass right on top, 306 point, technically, 0 grams. Again, this is where you should be doing some math. You should be typing in your calculator. 306.0 divided by, right here's your division symbol, divided by 22.5. Okay, you should be doing that. Calculate it now. When you find your calculation, which I have to squeeze in up here, you should get an answer of 13.6 grams per milliliter. It's the exact same thing. Keep those letters. Don't change them even a little bit. Okay? So we are going to continue to practice this because I get it is rather difficult to understand. So if you need, rewind a couple minutes, watch me talk through those videos again, and again, and again if you need to. But if you kind of have a grasp on things, we're going to go ahead and jump into another activity, a worksheet, and hopefully some labs coming up, or at least a lab. But we need to understand what's going on first, and I definitely need you to understand this formula. Density equals mass divided by volume. How much stuff? And this might be something you want to make a note of on your notes. How much stuff takes up how much space? Okay, remember that sunflower seed ping pong ball example. That might be something else you want to write down. How much stuff can you fit inside a certain amount of space? That is your density. Okay, that's the biggest thing I need you to get, is to understand what density is. If we can't calculate it, we can learn that. Density is how much stuff takes up a certain amount of space. I think that's it for my rambling for right now. So whenever you're finished with this video, make sure you kind of understand it. Look up on the board or go to Google Classroom, figure out where you need to go next.